Story 1. This happened way back in 2011. The reason I'm compelled to share this now is because I graduate soon with my Master of Science degree in mechanical engineering. My grades were poor all through high school, largely due to Michael, the subject of this post, and I've struggled with depression and anxiety over the years. I shared this story with my girlfriend this morning, and she was shocked by it. I just never thought to share it before. She told me to post it here. My mom dated a guy named Michael from the time I was 7 until December 17, 2010. I had just recently turned 18 and was in my last year of high school. Michael was a person who did not deal well with issues he had from his own abusive upbringing. I've been a bad person before myself, and I'm sure I still have a lot of room to improve, so I never like to speak poorly of people because I think it can be accurately assumed that most people have a good reason for being the way they are. It's not an excuse, but I don't think people are bad. I think bad circumstances condition people to behave badly. Michael was a severe alcoholic. He was childish, obsessed with knives, and would talk about how he wished he could hurt people. He hung around violent criminals and took me around them as a child. He was extremely verbally and emotionally abusive to my mother. My mother wanted him to be my dad, though, so to his credit, he filled the dad role as best he could. But the best he could do was teach me extremely unhealthy relationship dynamics and how to glorify violence and bravado. At the end of high school, my mom's mom died and left my mom a house. The house was decently sized, and while it's still in a rough neighborhood, it's in as safe a part of the rough neighborhood as there is. Everyone that lives in this corner of the city has been here for decades, and we all know each other very well. We're like a big family, but we keep to ourselves unless invited in by others. We respect boundaries, and that's what makes this small community a good one. It is important to note that my neighbors and older brothers are not angels. These people are violent criminals in their own right, but they were on my side, and this is important. So, the house was left to me and my mother. Michael refused to let us enter the home. My mom and I lived in the smallest, worst apartment in the most violent part of the city. For the 18-year-old me, I'd only just begun to reflect on life and realize how bad Michael and my narcissistic mother had been towards me. I was fed up, and living in this disgusting, violent apartment was just fueling my rage every second. One day, I was especially furious. I don't know why, I just woke up in an absolute quiet rage. I contained myself through the school day, and I was just fixated on getting a haircut. That was my goal for the day. Just get a haircut, get home, go to bed. It's very important to note that I'm in a boot for a badly sprained ankle at this point. That comes up later. My mom threw a monkey wrench in my plans. She was sure Michael was cheating on her again, so she demanded I go over to the house I grew up in that he kicked us out of to inspect and see if there was another woman or if there was evidence of other women being in the home. I protested, but to no avail. At this point, I'm about an inch from exploding. I drove over to the house, and I knocked at the door for 7 minutes. This pushed me to about half an inch from the explosion. I grew up in the house. I knew the acoustics of it. I don't care if you're in the last room upstairs at the back of the house. If someone lightly taps the front door, you hear it. So, I knew he was making me wait as some show of dominance that this was his house. He eventually unlocked the door, and I pushed it open, pushing him back in the process. He yelled out and asked me what was wrong, and I responded by saying that I was there to make sure he wasn't with anyone else in my grandma's house. Now, I'm a pretty large guy, and Michael was small. Even back then, I dwarfed him. But I've always been a gentle giant, as my mom says. I'd never gotten into a fight, almost never raised my voice, or asserted myself with anyone. So, for me to respond so firmly and disrespectfully, with no concern for how he felt, he backed off a bit at that moment. I noticed that. I began walking through every room of the house. I was finding nothing and no one, and I was fine with this. Remember, my goal is the haircut. That's all I want out of life right now. Then I got to my grandma's old bedroom. I opened the door, and it slammed back in my face. Out stepped Michael's brother, who was about my size, and he said to me, "There's nothing for you in there." I remember being so angry. It was like past the point of an explosion. I described it to my girlfriend as pure rage and malevolence, yet restrained. I had this blank expression on my face, turned around, walked downstairs, and told Michael in a calm voice, "Get your brother and leave now. I've had enough of you in my life." Michael, believing I was intimidated by his brother, got in my face and started to scream, curse, and threaten me. I stood there, honestly just looking at him like a lion looks at the weak, small, destructible gazelle, literally thinking to myself, I can break you. He then yelled at me to get out of my house. All of a sudden, I was snapped out of this trance state, and I responded, You have no house. You're homeless now? Get your brother and leave. He must have recognized that his brother was all the way upstairs, and I was inches away from him. But he was in too deep now. He had to commit or his pride would be wounded. So, he said, Oh, you think I'm a witch, huh? And of course, I responded, I think you're a homeless witch. He then turned around and kept repeating, You think I'm a witch? He eventually came back with 2 knives in his hands. I saw this, and at that moment, I was very seriously okay with the thought of dying right then and there. Life had always been bad, and I couldn't even get my hair cut. This part still makes me cry even right now. So, I told him, You're going to have to kill me the first time you swing at me with those. Then his brother came downstairs. I never took my eyes off of Michael. His brother stood on the stairs a few feet away from Michael and me. Michael dropped the knives and tried to tackle me and push me out of the house. I slipped a little because of the boot, but once I got a little friction under the boot, it literally felt like when your little cousin or sibling tries to fight you. At that moment, I thought about how I was about to destroy this man. His brother must have seen me smile because then he jumped in and started pushing me as well. I don't know if I was stronger than I thought, or if the rage gave me an adrenaline rush, but I was pushing them both back. Michael's brother then started to kick my boot, which both hurt my ankle and made me slip back. That, coupled with them pushing, eventually pushed me out of the front door, off the porch, and down the stairs onto the ground in front of the house. This was the angriest I have ever been in my life. I was angry to the point where I would have gladly hurt myself to hurt them. I got so overcome with emotion, I started to cry, and my breathing got erratic. Michael and his brother were taunting me as this happened, and I just started to take off the boot. I didn't want the haircut anymore. I wanted both of them hurt or gone. The next thing I noticed was that people started surrounding me. I was still struggling to regain motor control and take off the boot. Then 2 of my older brothers from the neighborhood, Jiggy and Tyrone, kneeled down and consoled me. Jiggy asked me what was wrong and what had happened. I told them about all the things Michael had done over the years and what happened that day. When I got to the end, Tyrone said, Hold up, little Chris, these jerks put you out of Miss Mama's house after you told them to leave. Then both Gigi and Tyrone started taking their shirts off and told me they'd take care of them, but only if I said it. I then heard all the stirring behind me. Nearly the entire block was in our yard or in the street in front of our yard. They were all calling out support, saying things like, He's not going to do you like that, little Chris. Not on this street. I looked up at Michael and his brother, and I could see the fear on their faces. I just shook my head yes and said not to hurt them badly. Jiggy and Tyrone ran in the house after them and dragged them out into the front yard. Then a circle pretty much formed around them, and it was just the most spectacular beatdown I'd ever seen. After that, Jiggy said they'd help me take all their stuff out of the house and told me to keep the stuff I liked. So, I did exactly that. I went in with about 10 people. I gave some stuff away to them, kept some stuff, and pretty much just gave Michael and his brother the clothes no one else wanted. They ended up leaving their clothes. Here's why. The next-door neighbor was this old veteran. Real gritty, no-nonsense old guy named Alvin. Alvin walked out with his shotgun. He walked over to these 2 bloody pulps on the lawn and said, Now get off my street. He literally just yelled at them to get up and run, crawl, or roll to get off the block. He followed them stumbling up to the main road and then calmly walked back. That was the last day I ever saw or heard from either of them. Story 2. This happened 6 years ago. The fence facing the entitled mom was old, so we took it down and rebuilt it. The entitled kid in the story was a 5-year-old boy, I think, who ran around his yard every day. When he saw the opportunity, he entered our house and looked through our stuff. We told him and his mom about his entry into our house, and she said, He is only a child and doesn't know what he is doing. The fence was done after 4 days. It was a big fence. One time, I was exhausted after work, and I went to drink a glass of water and think about life while I was resting on a couch. I saw with the corner of my eye a small gremlin entering my room. I was shocked. I shouted at him, and he ignored me. I shouted again, and he took my Xbox 360, which was on a table, and ran. I couldn't catch him. He ran back to his house with me, chasing after him, but he was quick. He entered the house and locked the door. I knocked and knocked until the entitled mom opened the door. Me, your child stole my console. Then, out of nowhere, she slapped me and said, "Don't speak to me in that language, idiot. My angel didn't steal anything." I screamed for my father to come and speak with that witch, and she closed the door in my face. After 2 minutes, I came back with my dad to recover my console. "Dad, entitled mom, give back the console, or I will call the police." Entitled mom, "Go ahead, witch. I will press charges on you." We called the police, and 2 police officers arrived after a while. Police Officer 1, what seems to be the problem? Me. That kid stole my console and would not give it back, and the entitled mom in this house slapped me right across the face. Police Officer 1 knocked at the entitled mom's door. "Ma'am, open the door." Entitled mom, "Go away. I didn't do anything." After about 5 minutes of arguing, the entitled mom opened the door. Police Officer 1, "Ma'am, give back the console, or you will need to come with me." Entitled mom, "He is too old. I was 10 at the time for it. My kid needs it." Police Officer 2, "Ma'am, that's not a reason to steal something." Entitled mom, "No, forget you and your stupid game." She proceeded to enter and get the console. And of course, she wouldn't give it up nicely. She actually threw it with full force at me. It shattered, and she was obliged to pay for it. It broke my tooth somehow. Police Officer 2 handcuffed her and put her in the car, and she spat at him. Of course, we ended up pressing charges against this crazy woman. Long story short, she was charged with trespassing and assault. Story 3. This happened about 8 years ago, and I had forgotten about it until another post reminded me of it. Many moons ago, I worked at a local big box store as a department manager. I knew a lot of the people who worked there because it's a small town, so most of us went there to work after graduating high school. A very old friend started working there too, and we instantly clicked again. I'll call her Cher for this post. Cher's fiancé worked there too, so we all became pretty close. We took breaks and lunches together and helped each other out if needed. I thought we were all good friends. Little did I know that was not the case. After a while, Cher was actively planning out her wedding. The bachelorette party came up, and she wanted to go to Atlantic City for the weekend. I thought that was a great idea, and I had never been before. I offered to book the room in a nice hotel Trump, now the Hard Rock. So, the next day, I booked it and told her it was all set up. During this time, my ex-husband and I were having some issues. I would talk to her about it because I thought I could trust her. Barely a week after I made the reservations, I received a text from her that wasn't meant for me. I don't remember the exact words, but she basically called me pathetic and annoying and used my name in that text. She was referring to my marital problems. I sat for a minute and responded that I think she meant to text that to someone else. She made some lame excuses about autocorrect or something. I knew it was nonsense. Fast forward about a month. The bachelorette party was almost here. Everyone was so excited to spend the weekend in a nice hotel on my dime. I was excited too, but for a different reason. You see, after I got that text, I canceled the reservations and didn't mention it. I waited until it was too late for them to get another room. When I did drop the bomb, she was not impressed. I said something petty along the lines of, "An annoying, pathetic person is not paying for your stupid weekend. Get lost." They still went but had to sneak into her fiancé's hotel room and fit 10 people in a double queen. They had a bad time, and I used the money to get a new tattoo that weekend instead. Money well spent. It was worth it for me.